May the angels wrap you in pure golden light right now, wherever you are sitting, standing, or lying down. May their wings fold gently around your shoulders, and may you feel, truly feel, that you are never alone. You are seen. You are known. You are loved beyond what any human word can fully hold. Welcome to the Angel's Message for You original channel. This is our only official channel. Please beware of copycat and pirated channels, and stay connected to the original source for authentic angel messages and true blessings. Before we begin, a heartfelt thank you to Karen, Irene, and Mary, and for your beautiful Ko-Fi link super thanks donation. Thank you for your generous seed. May your soulmate journey be guided by love, miracles, and angelic protection. Now, before we go any further, I need you to stop whatever else is running in the background of your mind. Stop the replaying. Stop the wondering. Stop the quiet ache you have been carrying around like it belongs to you permanently. Because what the angels are about to show you in the next few minutes is going to shift something inside of you that has been waiting, patiently, quietly, desperately, to be shifted. There is someone in your life, or someone who was in your life, someone you loved deeply, cared for without conditions, stood beside without hesitation. And right now, that person is either already speaking about you or about to. Not to honor you, not to thank you, but to rewrite the story of what happened between you. And the angels say, do not look away from this message, because what unfolds from here is not a warning. It is a liberation. Stay with this until the very end, because the final part of this message carries the answer you have been waiting months, maybe years, to receive. You gave this person something rare. You gave them love that did not come with a tally sheet. You gave them your patience on the days they were difficult. You gave them your time on the days they were careless with it. You gave them your silence when they needed space and your words when they needed comfort. You showed up for them in ways they never fully acknowledged, in moments they probably do not even remember now. And you did it all with open hands and an unguarded heart. You believed, and this is the most beautiful and the most painful part, you believed that genuine care would eventually be recognized, that loyalty would be returned, that kindness would land and grow roots in someone who received it so freely. But hear this from the angels now, gently and without judgment. Love given from a pure heart is still one of the most powerful forces in any human life. It leaves marks. It leaves traces. It leaves footprints that truth can always follow, even years later. Even when the person who received that love has chosen to forget the shape of it. Tonight or today, whatever moment you are finding this, the air around you feels different. Maybe heavier than usual. Maybe like something is shifting underneath the surface of ordinary life without your permission. That feeling is real. Your body is picking up on something before your mind has fully caught up. The angels want you to know what that something is. The person you protected, the one you gave warmth to when they were cold, the one you steadied when they were shaking, the one who leaned on your strength in their weakest hours. That person is standing right now at the edge of a confession. They are preparing to tell people a story about you. And it is not the full story. It is not the honest one. It is a version that has been quietly sculpted in private moments, shaped by fear and envy and the unbearable pressure of owing someone else gratitude they cannot figure out how to carry. You may feel a tightening in your chest as you hear this pull of emotion, a knot somewhere between your throat and your heart. Do not push that feeling away. The angels say that is not anxiety. That is awareness waking up inside of you. That is your soul recognizing a truth that your conscious mind is just now beginning to process. So stay here. Stay with this message. Because what unfolds next explains everything. Why your nights have felt longer lately. why your mind circles back to this person even when you try to let it go, why your name has been moving through spaces you have never even walked into. Listen very carefully now. Truth does not always announce itself with a spotlight and a loud voice. It moves quietly at first. It whispers from behind closed walls. It walks slowly before it runs. It takes shape before it takes a name. This person knows your softness. They know it because you trusted them with it. You shared with them where you hurt and where you heal, the parts of yourself you do not show just anyone. You let them see the tender places, and that knowledge should have been sacred between you. Instead, that knowledge became something else. A tool. A map of where to press and what to say to make their version of events sound believable. They have rehearsed their words. Not once, but many times, alone and in quiet moments, polishing sentences until they sound emotionally convincing. They will tell people they were misunderstood. They will position themselves as someone who endured too much. They will suggest that your care came with hidden conditions, that your patience was actually control in a softer disguise. And the angels say to you directly, do not panic when you hear this. This is not about destroying you. This was never about you at all, not really. This is about them saving themselves from the discomfort of looking in a mirror. There is a thing that happens in human hearts when gratitude becomes too heavy to carry honestly. When someone has received more than they feel they can ever repay, they face a quiet crisis. And the easiest exit from that crisis is to rewrite the story so the debt disappears. If they can convince others and themselves that you were not truly generous but actually harmful, the weight lifts. They can breathe again. What they do not understand is what the angels have always known. Truth has weight. Lies have speed. But speed burns out. And once words are released into the world, they cannot be called back. The moment they begin to speak, a clock starts ticking. One they did not set and cannot stop. Here is what they never calculated into their equation. Your consistency, not your anger, not your defense, not your very understandable urge to correct every distorted sentence. Your consistency, the way you have always showed up, the way you have always behaved, the way your character has been witnessed again and again across time by people who actually paid attention. While they speak with urgency, you remain composed. While they reach for drama, you reach for precision. While they seek sympathy, you hold your ground with the quiet dignity of someone who knows what actually happened. And that contrast? The angels say it is not small. It is seismic. It reshapes everything around it without a single argument. Because people notice patterns even when they pretend not to. Even when they are nodding along and offering verbal support, something deeper in them is running a different calculation. They are remembering. They are cross-referencing. They are recalling who showed up without being asked. Who solved problems instead of multiplying them. Who stayed calm when chaos would have been far easier. As this person keeps talking, something starts to crack. Not dramatically, not immediately, but the cracks come. Stories shift slightly in the retelling. Emotions start to feel performed rather than felt. Small details from different versions stop lining up perfectly. And without you lifting so much as a finger, without you entering a single room to defend your name, the audience they have been carefully curating begins to feel something uncomfortable. They begin to sense that something is off. And that sensing is the beginning of everything changing in your favor. Because real pain speaks differently than rehearsed pain. Real hurt does not need an audience to validate it. Real wounds do not require the wounded person to keep retelling the story to feel that the wound was real. What looks like a threat pointed at you right now is actually exposure in disguise. Not your exposure. The more they speak, the more clearly your silence begins to glow. The more they work to define you, the more others are reminded of who you have always been, in every ordinary moment, in every room you have ever shared. Do not miss what is happening here. This is not a punishment arriving in your life. This is a turning point. Life sometimes allows betrayal to surface precisely so you can finally step out of roles you were never meant to play forever. You were never meant to be someone else's emotional safety net indefinitely. You were never meant to be the stable ground for a person who refused to become stable themselves. You gave freely, yes, but the gift was received without the growth that should have accompanied it. And now, this difficult moment is releasing you from an obligation that had quietly become a cage. The revelation that is coming will sting. The angels are honest with you because they love you. There will be a moment of sting. But on the other side of that sting is something you may not have felt in a very long time. Relief, release, space. When their words eventually reach you directly, the angels urge you to resist the pull to correct every sentence. Let time do what time is extraordinarily good at doing. Let truth breathe. Let observation replace reaction. Because you correcting every distorted detail only pulls you deeper into their narrative. Your silence places you above it. There is a new kind of strength forming inside of you right now. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that announces itself with arguments and evidence. Quieter kind. The kind that does not beg to be understood in the middle of a storm. The kind that does not chase validation from people who were never qualified to give it. The kind that knows deep in its bones that character is not explained in a single moment. It is proven across hundreds of ordinary ones. This is where your story changes its pace and its tone. Not because you fought back, but because you finally, fully let go of what was never yours to carry. Remember this when the noise gets loud. When someone tells everyone a distorted version of who you are, they are not writing your ending. They are revealing their own beginning. The chapter they are choosing to open will teach others far more about them than it will ever teach anyone about you. And when the noise fades, and it always fades, what remains in the room is substance. Quiet, unshakable, undeniable substance. You have that. You have always had that. The coming days may feel a little strange, as if the ground beneath your familiar life is shifting when you expected it to stay still. The angels say let it shift. Better ground is forming. Ground that can actually support who you are becoming, not who you were pressured to shrink yourself into being for someone else's comfort. Stay present through this. Stay aware. Stay calm in your center even when the edges feel chaotic. Because this is only the first layer being peeled back. What comes next will not just surprise the people around you. It will redefine the way your name is spoken in rooms you are not standing in. And that redefinition is long overdue. A quiet shift begins long before the noise reaches its peak. Before any of their words land directly at your feet, something has already started moving in the background. In the invisible social fabric that connects people to each other. Conversations grow quieter when your name comes up. People who have heard the story begin to listen more than they speak. Eyes start observing emotional reactions in the storyteller instead of simply accepting the story itself. Before we go deeper into today's message, if you feel guided by this energy, you can sow your seed for your soulmate's well-being and protection through the Ko-Fi link Super Thanks in the description or pinned comment. This is a simple way to support this divine mission and invite blessings for your soulmate journey, emotional healing, and overall well-being. Many believe that when you give with a pure heart, it returns as love, peace, happiness, and abundance in your life. Your support helps this channel continue spreading divine messages, guidance, and hope to many souls around the world. The person you once gave your energy to believes they are controlling the narrative. But narratives have a strange and powerful habit of eventually exposing the teller. Every time they retell their version, the emotion intensifies but the clarity weakens. The story becomes heavier in delivery even as it grows thinner in logic. Meanwhile, you continue living exactly as you always have. Focused, grounded, unchanged in your values. Not performing steadiness for an audience but actually being steady because that is simply who you are. And this contrast between someone who grows louder and someone who remains quiet creates a tension that no amount of explanation can resolve. Humans are instinctive creatures. They sense imbalance even when they cannot name it. What started as their attempt to redefine you begins, without warning, to place them under a very uninvited spotlight. There is something deeper the angels want you to understand about why this situation feels so personal, so raw, so close to the center of you. You did not simply give love to this person. You gave safety. That is rarer and harder to find than love. You gave them a safe place to fall apart, to be inconsistent, to be scared, to be far less than their best self. You gave them reassurance in the moments they doubted themselves most deeply. You gave them patience every time they tested it. And now, the same person is uncomfortable with the memory of all of that receiving. Because to honor what you gave them would require an honesty about themselves that they are not yet ready to face. Gratitude demands accountability. Accountability feels heavier than blame. So they chose blame. They chose a story where they are the one who endured, and you are the one who failed. But every sentence they release carries the echo of what they actually owe you. And that echo makes them uncomfortable even as they speak. It seeps into their tone. It bends their body language. It shows up in the moments between words when the story pauses and the truth tries to surface. People listening may nod, but inside, questions form without invitation. Why is this story being told with such urgency now? Why does it need this many witnesses? Why does each telling add more emotion but somehow feel less convincing? Because stories driven by genuine truth seek understanding. Stories driven by fear seek validation. And audiences, even when they do not consciously recognize the difference, feel it. Here is what unfolds next in the spaces you cannot directly observe. Quietly, without any orchestration on your part, comparisons begin. Someone remembers a moment that directly contradicts the accusation. Someone else recalls watching you choose restraint when a reaction would have been entirely justified. A third person notices that your absence from the public conversation feels intentional rather than defensive, and they respect it without being asked to. This is how perception shifts in the real world. Not through grand moments of revelation, quietly, gradually, with the slow accumulation of small awarenesses that add up to something undeniable. You are no longer just the subject of someone else's story. You have become the standard against which that story is now being measured. And for someone who depends on exaggeration, that is an extraordinarily dangerous development. The more they try to paint a picture of you that does not match the living reality of your presence in people's memories, the harder people look for evidence. And evidence favors consistency. Evidence favors patterns. Evidence favors time. You have all three on your side. They have only urgency, and urgency always fades. Hold this truth close when the doubts creep in at 2 in the morning and the noise feels very loud. You do not need to enter every room and clear your name. Your life is already doing that work while you sleep. Every day that you show up with integrity, In small moments, in quiet moments, in moments no one is watching, you reinforce a reputation that no single voice can dismantle. The person speaking about you is beginning to feel a pressure they did not fully anticipate. The sense that control is quietly slipping, that the sympathy they expected to accumulate is thinner than they projected. This is the moment when regret often disguises itself as justification. They may soften their tone slightly. They may begin to reframe parts of the story as misunderstanding rather than accusation. But words already released cannot be fully recalled. And once people begin to see through a narrative, the clarity that arrives in that moment tends to last. Let this settle into the deepest part of you. You are not being diminished by any of this. You are being revealed. The exposure they intended to shine on you is slowly and irreversibly turning inward on them. What presents itself as betrayal is actually alignment correcting itself in real time. Life is removing someone who could only remain close to you by hiding behind your generosity. The space they leave behind will feel strange at first. Then it will feel lighter. Then it will feel like room to finally breathe. This chapter does not end in chaos. It ends in clarity. And clarity, once it arrives in full, cannot be taken back by anyone. Something irreversible happens as this unfolds further. The moment arrives when the story they have been circulating begins to move without them needing to push it. Words, once released, take on their own momentum. They travel into rooms the storyteller cannot enter, into minds that carry no loyalty to either side, into private conversations where emotion is quietly weighed against memory and found to be mismatched. In those spaces, you are present not as a person but as a pattern, a series of actions that people carry in their own memory, a timeline of moments they personally witnessed or experienced alongside you. And this is where truth finds its sharpest edge, because patterns do not argue, they simply exist. And as your name moves through these conversations, something unexpected begins to form around it. Doubt, not about you, about the one doing the telling. Small pauses begin to appear in conversations after they speak. A hesitation before agreement that was not there before. And that hesitation is powerful beyond what its silence suggests. It is the sound of a narrative beginning to lose its grip. Here is the part they never considered. When someone attempts to rewrite a bond built on genuine, lived, consistent care, they gravely underestimate how deeply those who witnessed it remember. Not just the dramatic moments, the ordinary ones, the texture of presence, the willingness to show up without being celebrated for it. Your love was not a performance. It was woven into quiet decisions and patient moments and small consistent choices. And lived things leave different marks than spoken things. The person who leaned on your strength now feels exposed by the contrast their accusations create against the memory of that strength. Because accusation placed next to remembered kindness does not add up. And the angels say memory almost always wins. And here is what is simultaneously happening within you. You are no longer desperate to be understood by every person. Something steadier has moved into the space that desperation used to occupy. Acceptance, not of what was said about you, but of what this entire moment represents in the arc of your life. You are seeing with clearer eyes that love given without self-abandonment is a completely different experience than love given at the cost of yourself. You are recognizing, perhaps for the first time with full honesty, how frequently you softened your own truth to protect someone else's comfort. That recognition is not bitterness arriving. It is wisdom arriving. And wisdom does not feel like anger. It feels like ground under your feet. It returns your energy to you. While they are busy maintaining a story that requires constant effort, you are quietly reclaiming your center. And this internal shift, this quiet but complete reorientation toward yourself, changes how you move through the world. People detect it without being able to name it, because calm that comes from true clarity cannot be faked or performed. It signals something authentic that explanation could never provide. A quiet reversal is taking place. The audience they hope to secure is beginning to see a different picture than the one they painted. They see you as the steady presence. They see the storyteller as the unsettled one. Sympathy thins gradually. Attention begins to drift from the narrative toward the person telling it. And in that drift, reflection enters uninvited. Someone wonders quietly why you never tried to convince anyone of anything. Someone else realizes you never asked for sides to be chosen. These quiet observations carry more weight than any public statement you could make. They reshape perception from the inside without anyone directing them. This is how narratives collapse. Not through confrontation, through the organic accumulation of quiet observations that eventually add up to an undeniable pattern. Let this anchor you when the noise gets close. You were not meant to be understood by everyone, especially not through the filtered version someone else constructed. You were meant to be known through your alignment, the way your actions, your words, your presence, and your values line up consistently over time. And alignment speaks louder over the long arc of things than any single voice raised against you in a single season. What is unfolding is not chaos. It is correction, a realignment of relationships and perceptions and paths. The person who could only exist in your light by distorting it is slowly, inevitably stepping out of your story. And as they do, your name is settling into a new meaning for those who matter. Not dramatic, not sensational, simply solid, reliable, trustworthy. No, a deeper layer is coming into focus now. What at first felt entirely personal, a betrayal aimed at you, a wound designed specifically to hurt, is revealing itself as something larger. The person speaking about you is now driven by the weight of their own words. Their own story has cornered them. Every detail they shared demands consistency. Every emotion they performed demands proof. And this is where the weight of their choice finally catches up with the speed of it. People who have heard the story begin to replay it with logic rather than sympathy. Does what I heard align with what I personally observed? Why does this story feel heavier and more exhausting each time it is repeated? Truth lightens when shared. Distortion burdens the speaker. It grows heavier with every retelling because it must be maintained, managed, and defended. That burden is beginning to show, even when they smile, even when they speak with practiced confidence. You may begin to notice a subtle shift in how people approach you. More respect in their manner, more care in the words they choose, less curiosity about drama and more genuine interest in understanding who you actually are. People sense that you chose dignity over spectacle, and that choice, quiet, consistent, unannounced, separates you from the noise in ways no argument ever could. Inside the storyteller, something else is happening now. They are beginning to feel the gap between what they intended and what is actually occurring. The attention they sought is no longer satisfying. In their private moments, a doubt creeps in about whether speaking at all was the right choice. This doubt does not lead immediately to accountability. It leads first to exhaustion, because maintaining a fractured story requires constant vigilance. Every interaction becomes a performance. Every new listener must be managed. Meanwhile, your energy is coming back to you. You sleep more deeply. Your thinking is cleaner, less distracted. You are no longer bracing for impact. You are watching from a place of steadiness. Let this realization land fully. You did not lose anything of real value in this experience. What you lost was a role that asked too much of you while returning too little. The person who could not hold your care without eventually resenting it was simply not aligned with the life that is meant to find you. Their choice to speak has accelerated a separation that was already forming beneath the surface of things. And acceleration, as painful as it is in the moment, is ultimately merciful. It shortens the period of confusion. It removes the beautiful illusions that kindness sometimes builds around relationships that have quietly outgrown their purpose. What remains when all of it clears is truth. Standing quietly, no longer needing to compete with anything. When someone tells everyone a version of you that is distorted by their own fear, they unknowingly give you a gift. Not a comfortable one, but a real one. The gift of freedom. Freedom from the effort of explaining yourself to someone who was never truly listening. Freedom from managing someone else's fragility. Freedom from carrying the emotional weight of a person who was never willing to carry their share. Your story continues, uninterrupted, moving forward. Their story pauses and loops and weighs on them with each repetition. This is not revenge unfolding. This is balance returning. As this chapter approaches its close, the angels ask you to feel the strength that is growing in you right now. Not the loud kind that needs witnesses. Not the reactive kind that needs an opponent. The quiet, unshakable kind that has been building through every moment you chose to remain composed when you had every right to fall apart. What happens now is subtle, but it is permanent. The narrative that once felt like a threat begins to lose its oxygen. It is still told in some rooms, but it is told with less conviction. It travels without the momentum it once carried. People hear it and file it away without passing it forward. This is how stories actually end in real life. Not in dramatic moments of public reckoning. In gradual, quiet indifference. Meanwhile, your life has begun speaking in ways that words never could. The calm you carry is becoming a conversation on its own. Your deliberate absence from the noise reads not as weakness but as something almost instructive, like someone who understood something others are still figuring out. People begin to arrive at an understanding without you needing to provide it. You were never in this to win a story. You were living a truth, and truth does not chase attention. It simply waits for recognition to catch up. There is a reckoning happening beyond your field of vision. The person who spoke about you now feels the echo of their own voice following them from room to room. They are beginning to realize they have been standing in the same place retelling the same story while you have already moved forward. That realization sits uncomfortably. It produces not immediate growth but a kind of exhaustion, and exhaustion eventually produces reflection. They may never apologize. The angels are honest with you because you deserve honesty, not comfortable illusions. They may never fully admit what they did or genuinely reckon with why they did it. And the angels say, that is no longer your concern. Closure does not require their agreement or their confession. Closure requires your own internal acceptance of what happened, what it meant, and what it released you from. You have already crossed that threshold in ways you may not have fully named yet. Their unfinished business remains with them. Yours has already begun transforming into something entirely different. Into discernment, into wisdom, into a kind of self-knowledge that can only be forged by surviving exactly this kind of experience. Look at how you are carrying yourself now compared to the beginning of all this. There is less hesitation in your decisions, Less need to walk your intentions around the room explaining yourself to people who were not fully invested in understanding you. You trust the quiet signal inside you, the one that knew something was off long before you had words for it. More than you trust external noise and approval. This shift is profound because it does not announce itself. It does not argue. It does not seek validation. It simply exists in the new way you move through the world. And people respond to it with something that looks a great deal like respect, even when they cannot fully explain why. Let this be the truth you carry forward from this moment. You gave love and care because that is the quality of your soul. Not because you expected something of equal measure in return. Someone chose to misuse that gift. And in misusing it, they revealed the limits of their own capacity, not the limits of your worth. Your story was never damaged by their words. It was clarified by them. And clarity, once it arrives, is irreversible. You cannot unsee what has been made clear. You cannot unfeel what has been confirmed. You cannot unknow what this experience has taught you about the kind of love and the kind of people that are truly worthy of your extraordinary capacity for care. From this point forward, your path is cleaner. The circle around you is more honest. Your name carries the weight of someone who maintained their authenticity when it would have been far easier to collapse into defense or crumble into bitterness. Nothing spoken behind your back can take that away. A final realization is settling now, and the angels want you to let it in fully. Peace does not arrive with permission from outside of you. Peace arrives with your own internal decision. The decision to stop returning to moments that no longer carry power over your future. The decision to let your way of living speak instead of your explanations. The decision to invest your remarkable capacity for care into spaces and people that will actually tend it with the respect it deserves. The world around you adjusts to this choice. People no longer approach you with questions loaded with judgment. They approach with a respect shaped by what they have observed in you across time. Your composure, maintained through something that would have fractured many people, has quietly rewritten how you are expected to show up in any room. You are no longer seen through the lens someone else constructed. You are seen as you actually are. Steady, self-contained, real. Something else becomes undeniably clear as the days move forward. The person who tried to define you through their words begins to fade from the central place they have occupied in your energy. Not erased, not hated, simply resized. They no longer occupy the mental space they once did. Their voice, once so loud in your thoughts, grows distant and faint until it is simply something that happened once and no longer directs anything. This is the real turning point. Not the moment when every person around you finally understands the full truth, but the moment when you stop needing them to. Freedom arrives, the instant validation from outside is replaced by trust from within. And that freedom settles into your life slowly but completely, the way calm settles after a storm that has finally exhausted itself. People begin interacting with you with a different quality of attention. They sense depth where once they saw only generosity. You are no longer only the one who gives. You are the one who discerns. The one who has learned, through the particular fire of this experience, the difference between love and self-erasure, between compassion and compulsive caretaking. This balance, hard-earned and genuine, changes the quality of every connection you step into from here. You begin drawing toward you the people who value clarity over chaos, depth over performance, sincerity over spectacle. And the angels say, "This is not a consolation prize for what you have been through. This is the actual destination that everything in your recent life has been moving you toward." The angels have one final message before this transmission closes. You were always stronger than the moment you found yourself in. You were always more consistent than the story told about you. You were always more aligned with truth than with the version someone needed to create to feel safer. What has been revealed in you through this experience is not a wound. It is your foundation, and foundations do not crumble when weight is placed on them. They hold, they ground, they make everything built above them possible. Walk forward from this moment knowing that your love was never a weakness. Your care was never naivety. Your patience was never blindness. These were always gifts, and they still are. The only thing that has changed is the wisdom with which you will offer them going forward. The discernment with which you will choose who receives them. The self-respect with which you will recognize the difference between someone who can honor what you offer and someone who can only consume it. The angels are with you in every step that comes next. They were with you through every difficult step that came before. They were with you in the quiet moments when you chose dignity over retaliation, composure over collapse, silence over the kind of noise that would have diminished you. You are not at the end of something here. You are at the beginning of a version of your life that is cleaner, truer, and more aligned with who you have always been underneath all the roles and expectations and giving. That version of you is already here. It has been here all along, and it is more than enough. Dear beautiful soul, this angel's message for you channel is a sacred spiritual home, created for faith, healing, and divine guidance. A place where hearts awaken, and lives are gently transformed through divine messages. We warmly invite you to subscribe and stay connected, because the divine is always preparing something greater for your journey, something you are meant to receive in divine timing. If you feel moved to support this mission, you can sow your seed here for your soulmate blessings and divine love fulfillment. Your contribution is not just support. It is an energetic agreement with love, healing, and divine alignment in your own life. When you give with intention, it opens doors. Love flows more freely, happiness expands, and abundance multiplies in unexpected ways. Many believe that giving in faith activates a return of peace, joy, and emotional fulfillment in relationships and life. Whether it is $6, $11, $22, or $55, your generosity helps us continue spreading these divine messages of hope, healing, and soulmate guidance across the world. Every seed sown into this mission helps hearts heal, faith return, and souls reconnect with love. This is more than a channel. It is a movement of light, unity, and divine timing. Your support allows this sacred work to grow, touching lives that are searching for answers, comfort, and spiritual direction. We are all connected in this journey, and together we rise as one community under divine love. Let us open our hearts to the abundance that is already on its way. Amen.